welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be another story time, but I'm going to be doing my hair. As you can see, I've already done my makeup because some of you asked about hair, so I'm just gonna curl my hair. These story times do, like, I know I talk as if I'm talking to my friends or my cousins or something, but it's still obviously very personal, and it's still really hard to talk about certain things. So I try and articulate myself as well as I possibly can, and trying to be as sensitive and as understanding and as empathetic and as considerate as possible. So thank you so much for the kind of love that I've been getting on the story times. Means so much to me. So today's topic will be depression. I'm going to just take the top half and section it away. Gosh, I think hair is going to be a little bit harder to do with story time, especially with this kind of story time, but I'm going to do another section. But yeah, anyway, even though I studied psychology and biology at university, I have some knowledge, I would say. Obviously, I'm not qualified at all in the sense that I'm not a psychologist or a therapist or a psychotherapist or psychoanalysis. Any of this stuff, I'm not professional, and I don't know, you know, I can't tell you here any sort of professional advice. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm going to share my story of what happened and how I found out that I was depressed, what I did about it, and how I sort of got out of it a little bit, or not even got out of it. Probably the best word is how I manage it. I used some flexible hold hairspray. I don't use this on my clients, I use this on myself because it's a very strong smell, all the L'Oreal ones. I love L'Oreal, I'm sorry if you're watching. I doubt it, but the flexible hold one for yourself is okay, but obviously try and not use it every single day. I mean, you're breathing this stuff in. And then I'm using this curler from Babyless. Okay, this is their biggest tong that they have, and I love this because I like very wavy, almost like a blow-dried look. I don't like my hair to look very curly, but if you have shorter hair, it will look a little bit curlier. It's just my hair's long. I am going to the hairdressers after this, by the way, and actually trimming it and getting some bangs in and stuff. Anyway, right, so as you guys know, if you have watched all my other story times, and if you've read my blogs and stuff, I was born in Sri Lanka with my parents are from there as well, and we took refuge during the war and left Sri Lanka and immigrated to Germany. That's where we went first. And you know, just to give you a little bit of a background story, I guess, like, you know, we lived in a refugee home. You know, my sister was born 2 years later, and we still lived in, even with my sister, we lived in a refugee home for a few years until we got a council house, which was a one-bedroom kind of studio house. So me, my sister, my parents all slept in one room. The other room was a living room and a kitchen, and then we had the small bathroom in between. So it was literally like 2 rooms and then the bathroom in the middle, and we lived like that for a really long time as well. My parents really struggled with the language, so at home we always spoke Tamil. And so obviously when I started school, you know, whether it was kindergarten, whether it was primary school, up until I was going to secondary school, I really struggled with the language. I could only speak Tamil, and I was bullied for it at school because, you know, kids, and that's what happens in schools when you kind of stand out or you look different. You know, me and another kid who was also a refugee, we were the only 2 brown kids in the entire school, and so I was bullied at school. I'm not gonna, it was bad to the point where I would get beaten up during break time, and when I did, I used to go home with bruises and things, and my mum would ask me like what happened, and I would just say to her like, oh, I fell down the stairs, or you know, and for some weird reason there was a secondary school near my where we all lived, and these older kids, they were teenagers, okay? Bear in mind, I'm 8 or 9. And they would walk home from school the same way I would go. And every time they saw me, they would push me around, they'll pull on my bag, they'll say mean things. And so I used to, whenever I used to see them from far, I used to hide in the bushes or something like that. Sometimes I would, you know, they'll see me, they'll catch me, and again, they'll do things, and I don't remember most of it, but I would go home basically, never cry. I'd never cry then. I would just go home and lie to my mum outright that, oh yeah, just fell down, and my mum really thought that I was some clumsy child and stuff. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about those people. I don't remember those people. I don't even remember their names or anything like that, but I'm here to say that it started because, you know, bullying is something that happens to children no matter what your background is, whether you are a refugee or whether you do come from, you know, some may say privileged life or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That bullying can happen to children anywhere in the world. It can happen to adults anywhere in the world. It can happen to a grown-ass person at work. Anyway, it can happen, and it does happen, and it is sad, and that is something that can really mentally affect us, because these people who succeed in bullying you, you know, can mentally make you feel small, you know, intimidate you, make you feel worthless, make you feel really, really bad. Sorry, I know, like, my head's up here, and then I don't know if you can see my curl. So can you see, like, I'm just kind of curling towards the end of the hair, so it's giving me that wave. I'm not doing it from like high up, which you obviously can do as well, but this is how I like to do it. But anyway, yeah, so that was school life until I got to secondary school. When I got to secondary school, obviously we had moved then twice, and the place that we had moved in, finally, you know, both my parents, after doing 2-3 shifts, 2-3 different jobs, cleaning jobs, name it, they were finally in a position where they could pay rent for a nicer property, and me and my sister, you know, would have our own rooms that we could share. And my parents had a room, we had a kitchen, a separate living room, we had nice neighbors. It was definitely a better life. My parents were earning a little bit better as well, so they would buy us things, because Germany at the time, I'm assuming that's still the case, we didn't have school uniforms like in the UK, so you know, you would naturally want to look like the other kids. You would want to have nice things, you would want to have nice shoes or their clothes or what's in at the moment, and you would get bullied for that as well, because, you know, you're the poorer child or you're not wearing the latest things and stuff. Well, that is what happened to me. I'm not saying this is what happens to everyone, but that is what happened to us at the time, and this is like the 80s, early 90s, okay, a long time ago. Yeah, so anyway, and then only when I got to secondary school is when it was like a clean slate for me, because I could speak perfect German by then. It was a new school, so I ended up having these friends, and I was popular all of a sudden, and my parents would buy me and my sister nice clothes. My sister got into the same school as well, and we were like the cool kids, okay? And even though you'd think, hey, I got everything now, I've got this great life and whatever, obviously there was a lot of childhood trauma, but then I think that teenage life was overwhelming, and I think everyone can agree, if you have been a teenager or you're a mother who has a teenage child, son or daughter, teenage years are challenging. Your hormones are all over the place, you're kind of like growing up, and I had this whole thing of like being raised differently at home. My parents were really strict. I wasn't allowed to go cinema with my friends or even go out. But then at the same time, it was like, you know, you wanted to, because you're like, oh my god, but you know, you want these friends, you want to hang out. Anyway, those are general problems, and I know that that's, you know, usually what a lot of people go through, and that doesn't necessarily mean you go through depression, of course, but I think my childhood trauma, or a lot of the things that happened while I was a child, and there are other things that I don't want to mention. My parents would probably watch this video as well, and there are things that I don't really want to tell them, because I think they're older now. What are they going to do with knowing some of this stuff? It will just hurt them. So I'm not going to say some of the things, but maybe you can kind of guess what these things are, because I think a lot of us, especially that first generation, it does still happen now, but I'm just saying especially first generation Tamils who've moved, I think a lot of us went through that, and that was a massive trigger point for me, a lot of the abuse, if that makes sense. And I think that was like catching up to me because I couldn't talk about it to anybody. I didn't have anyone that I trusted. I didn't, even though I started getting all these new friends in school, it was kind of like really difficult because I wasn't in a position, or I wasn't able to speak to my parents. They were both working long hours. They were working really hard. You know, they were in their mid-20s when they moved to Germany, and they themselves probably had a lot of trauma from Sri Lanka and other places, and it was kind of like they didn't know how to deal with their own problems either. So they're not going to be like, you know, I'm not going to come back from school and my parents are not going to be like, so how was your day? Like, why don't we sit down and have a meal together and discuss things? No, that probably still doesn't happen in a lot of households, you know, especially no matter what community you're from. But I'm just saying that that is not what I grew up with. I'm able to do that with my parents now. Okay, I'm like in my late 30s and I'm able to call my parents and have an open conversation about so many things that I couldn't even dream about then. So I'll get to that anyway, how I taught my parents. But at the time, I couldn't talk to my parents, so it was a lot of trauma. And I started doing random things that I thought, like, I didn't realize they were connected to depression. Like, I was so concerned about the way I was looking, and I thought the things that are happening to me is because of the way I look. And I don't even want to say things physically because, you know, I don't want to discriminate. So let's just say that I looked different when I was a teenager as opposed to how I look after myself now, maybe. And at the time I was bullied for the way I looked, and I was bullied for things about me and stuff, or the way I did things, or the way I thought things. And I used to think it's because of the way I look is why I'm getting this kind of attention, whether it's bullying or whether it's unwanted attention from unwanted people, if you know what I mean. And I think, so I used to constantly hate myself and blame myself for it because I'm just like, oh, it's because of me. And so I started doing, you know, I used to throw up after eating. Like, I used to force myself, and I used to, you know, so I'm really sorry, trigger warning. I should have said trigger warning at the beginning, but there's going to be a lot of things that probably aren't very nice to hear. But I used to do that. I'm not going to go into detail because it is sensitive and I know that, but I used to do that, and then eventually it got so bad that I had to go to the doctors, told them how I'm feeling, and it was the doctor at the time that said to me, I think you're suffering from depression. And I didn't understand what it was. I was a teenager. I'm just like, what the hell? I've never heard this word in my life. And he just said, this is not bulimia or any kind of eating disorder. This is linked to your depression. And I remember going home and my parents were just like, oh, so what is it? Because they knew that I was constantly sick and I was losing a lot of weight and I wasn't really eating. So they were like, you know, what did the doctor say? And I did tell them that the doctor said that I had depression, and my parents were like, what is that? And so I looked it up. You know, we did have internet then, okay? Just one of those dial-up computers. But anyway, I did look it up, and then I tried to explain it to my parents at the time. And I remember my dad's first immediate reaction was just like, what do you have to be depressed about? You know, you have a roof over your head. We're buying you nice clothes and shoes that all your school kids have as well. And, you know, you have food. We buy you chocolate. Like, what could you be possibly depressed about? And I believed him. I believed my parents. I believed them both. And I thought to myself, yeah, like, how dare I? You know, how dare I be depressed, and how dare I feel that way? So brushed it under the carpet, didn't do anything about it, didn't go back to the doctors. And very shortly after that, we actually moved to the UK because a lot of my parents' siblings, especially my dad's side of the family, one second, all live in the UK. So they all convinced my parents and said, hey, is a better life, come here or something. That's what they said to convince them anyway. And we came over, and me and my sister were excited because we were young, and we were like, oh my god, this new world, oh my god, England. We were obsessed with Princess Diana at the time. Little did we know that it was going to be so different. I mean, me and my sister didn't speak English. We were put into a government school that was next to where my parents were staying. So we moved in with an uncle and aunt of mine, who, by the way, if you've watched my last story time, the aunt that we lived with is the aunt that passed away from cancer. So again, oh my god, I'll mention that later as well. But so we lived with them, and we would go to high school. We had to wear school uniform, obviously, which was very new to us. So obviously I really struggled, because imagine you're 14 years old, you're in this new school, people are laughing at you, picking on you, and I'm just literally walking home crying myself to sleep, and I'm like, why the hell did me and my sister agree to come here? And my parents were back to grinding, right? Like they naturally want to move out of my aunt's house, they want to buy a house, they want to do things. I was 16 and I met a guy and started dating him, and obviously my parents didn't know about it. I was definitely too young, okay? So I'm telling you right now, I don't know how parents are with their teenage children now. I'm not here to say when you should be dating and shouldn't be dating, but let's just say when you are a teenager, you are confused. You don't know yourself, you don't know what you want, and it's very, very easy to get so wrapped up and, you know, loving the attention from a guy. And the guy that I was dating was a lot older than me, and it kind of was just like, yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, anyone watching this, they'll probably know exactly who I am possibly talking about, or who I was with. But let's just say that wasn't a great relationship, and things went from bad to worse. And yeah, so I'm not here to throw anyone under the bus or make anyone feel uncomfortable. That's obviously not. But let's just say, you know, I'm sure a lot of you watching this can agree that you guys would have been in bad relationships. And for me, it was literally one after the other. I was attracting guys that weren't right for me on so many levels. And you know, but those are the guys that I would be attracted to. For me, it was just a case of like, I wasn't in a good place naturally. I didn't like myself, I didn't like the way I looked, I didn't like anything about me, and I used to, again, blame myself for people disliking me or calling me mean things or calling me names. So I always thought it's me. So then when a guy, and it could be any guy, paid attention to me, I was literally like, oh my god, you know, and it felt so special, when really and truly I should have sat there and been like, no, you know. And I think now I'm in that position to see what's good for me, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships. Like, you can sort of like analyze and then realize, you know, well, let's talk about friendship in another video, but, you know, because I feel like I'm still not really learning some of my lessons. But anyway, with relationships, however, it was one of those things where I feel like if you're not, I guess the word is healed, if you're not dealing with the issues that you have and stuff like that, you are going to attract, and it's not just people, it's things, it's anything. And when I say attracting, like, obviously, you know that I believe in God, and I'm very much into knowing that, like, very spiritual, and I feel like, you know, a lot of it is to do with God. But if you don't believe in God, and if you believe in manifestation or the universe or anything like that, you know that that's true. Like, when you're in a really bad place and you're feeling really negative about everything and about yourself, that's the negativity that you attract as well, whether it's work, whether it's relationships or whatever. From my teens to like my early 20s, things were really bad, okay? And it got so bad that I tried to take my life several times. Then with time, what had happened when my aunt, who I was really, really close to, who I lived with, who was the first person that I shared everything with, when she unfortunately passed away from cancer, so that threw me off completely. And I was back at home that summer. I was there during the funeral, and then that was it. One day, I don't know what happened. I just saw black. I just didn't know what happened. I don't know what was going through my mind. I don't know what was happening. I just cut myself, and all I remember, there was blood everywhere, and I don't know, I think my sister was going to the toilet and she heard something and she got concerned, and then my parents found me, ambulance, hospital, but this time they didn't send me home. This time they wouldn't let me leave until I saw somebody, and when I did see somebody, I kept repeating the same thing, that I didn't want to be around anymore, that I didn't want to live, and I didn't want to. And it's the first time I saw my parents cry. It's the first time my dad was begging, you know, for me to be okay and for me to come home and for me to work on things. And I did. I love my dad. I'm super close to my dad. You know, I've over the years gotten really close to my mum as well now. Like my teenage years wasn't, I used to blame my mum for everything. So I had a very bad relationship with my mum growing up. And then only, I would say in the last, 10 years, I've been like really close to my mum, and now I'm like very close to her, and I love her, and I understand her now, and that didn't happen when I was growing up. But seeing my dad, who I was always so close to, cry like that was really hard for me, and that's when I just thought to myself, do you know what, even if I'm not going to live for myself, I'm going to live for my parents. I'm not going to do that to them. They've sacrificed so much for me and my sister, and they did so much for me and my sister. So that was my thinking. However, obviously I went, you know, started therapy, and during therapy I started dating another guy, which honestly, I wish at the time I had people that I knew, that I was so close to, who had experienced similar things, to say to me, you need to heal, like you need to finish therapy, you need to work on all the stuff that you've been carrying since childhood before you can get into a relationship. But again, you know, when you just want to escape, and that's what happened to me. And I was dating this guy, and it got very serious very quickly. My parents were very happy, because I think for my parents it was kind of like, oh, she's found somebody, she's happy, she's great, you know, that's amazing. I think now my parents do understand that no, you shouldn't be until you're like fine. But at the time they wanted me to be better so badly that they were like, oh my god. Bearing in mind, this is, I'm already like 23, 24. I'm dating this new guy, and you know, I am having therapy. However, I've not been put on antidepressants. I've not been on them then. Okay, this is just me having therapy and working through things. But I then stopped the therapy. I was so crazy about this guy, and it got really serious. And then we had a very bad car accident, and yeah, people passed away in that car accident, and that was it. That just, as you can tell, I crashed. And do you know why I'm sharing this? I'm not going to go into details, you know, but the reason I'm sharing this is because this is what happens when you haven't dealt with your stuff, when you haven't dealt with your problems, your trauma, anything, okay, that's causing the depression. The smallest thing, I mean, this wasn't a small thing, this was obviously a big thing, but you're not able to cope, you're not able to manage, your whole world ends. And that's what happened to me again. And this time I was doing, I was having therapy, I was taking antidepressants, and I was starting to get better. And while I was starting to get better and things were getting better for me, and I started work, I started my hair and makeup career, which really, really distracted me and got me out of it as well. Like I felt like I had a sense of purpose. I had something to look forward to, and that was really important to me. And at the end of the day, you want to find something that makes you want to get out of bed. And I had days, I'm not joking you, okay? You're looking at me now all glam and stuff. There were times I wouldn't even shower, I wouldn't get out of bed, I would be in a hoodie and sweatshirts, no makeup, no nothing, hair in this greasy, disgusting bun, nothing wrong with it. I'm sure there are people who sometimes do that because they don't have the time, they have newborn babies, of course, and I respect that. I'm just saying that I was looking like that because mentally I wasn't in the right place. And you know, I wasn't eating, I was, oh my god, like 20 kgs less than what I am now, okay? I was literally in a very, very bad place. And yeah, but then you have family, right, who are telling you to get married because they're like, you're in your late 20s now. I basically was being pressured again to get married, and you guys know about the divorce story. That was another story time that I've already shared. And I wasn't any better, even though I didn't do anything to myself at this point. Like, I was still on medication, by the way. So even throughout my marriage, I was on, medication. At the time, as you probably heard in my story time, my parents were hiding knives and things, and they panicked, and I think maybe now you understand why they did that, but they really thought that after the divorce, because that only lasted 4 months, this time I was just like, no, I'm not listening to anybody, I'm not jumping into another relationship, I'm gonna go heal, I'm gonna go work on myself. And that's what I did, like you saw in that other story time as well. I found myself a private therapist near my parents' house, and I started going regularly for 6 months to talk about my divorce. And then I basically moved on to talking about other things, my trauma and stuff, even though I have been working on those throughout the years as well. But I was kind of like, almost like ticking off so many things that I had never addressed and I've never worked on. And I think only after that, again, I was like so focused on my work, I was weaning off my antidepressants as well, I was getting better, I was feeling better, I felt purpose again, I had goals, I was doing so many things. I was working out, I was traveling, I was working hard, social media was growing for me. There were so many things from a career point of view, personal level. I had a lot of friends, I was just attracting a lot of positivity, opportunities, people, so many things. And so when I met my now husband, I was definitely in a very, very, very good place. I was very, very, in a very good place. And then obviously we've been married 7 years now. We only celebrated our 7-year anniversary a few days ago. So we've been married 7 years. I would love to do a story time on marriage as well, actually. I just kind of, oh my God, this is probably going to be a really long video. But in this video, I obviously went from start to finish. I gave you as much basics as possible, even though it is a lot that happened. And maybe I've even missed out a few things. Maybe one day I should write a biography when I'm like 70 or something, sorry. But I just feel like I've given you things, because sometimes people are like, but why were you depressed? Like, what caused you depression? And I've shared what caused me depression. That doesn't mean somebody who went through something similar to me would suffer from depression. It could be anything. It could be anything. At the end of the day, depression, to me, according to me, is when you feel so low that it's really hard to feel positive or great every single day. Like, you're feeling down, you're not letting people into your lives, you're finding it hard to open up to people, to communicate with people, and every single day is a grey day, and that's bad, and that gets from bad to worse, and you're almost trying to, you're not even trying, it's like you just feel really bad, you feel bad all the time, and you don't know what it is, and you don't know why, but it's just there, and it's just like, simmering in the background, and it's just like, it's almost like you have this grey cloud over your head all the time, and you feel miserable, and you feel, and you find temporary things that excite you. Like, somebody could be so depressed, but you might not even know that. Like, you might be hanging around with somebody who seems perfectly fine, and you think, wait, why did they try and take their lives? Or why are you finding out that they're severely depressed and they're on antidepressants or something, instead of sitting there and questioning what it could be, because it's never just one reason, guys. It's never just the one reason that triggered them to be depressed. It's something that creeps up and stays with you for a really, really long time. So even though, yes, I'm not on antidepressants anymore, I have not seen a therapist anymore, I openly talk to my parents, which is something I've had to do. Throughout the therapy, I've learned that I had to communicate with my parents. It was really hard and challenging at the beginning, but I did it because my therapist made me, okay? Like, well, not made me, but you know what I mean. Like, so that I can open up to people, that I can. That was the first thing I learned in therapy, is to talk about it, to talk about my problems, to communicate with people, because people are never, like, who are around you, are never going to know something's wrong with you unless you say something to them. And that is something I think I've learned. And so whether I'm feeling good, whether I'm feeling bad, if I'm bothered by something, if I'm not happy with something, or I'm so happy about something, or I'm so excited, or I'm so proud of you for something, I will communicate that. And that's become such a strong point for me. Maybe you think that too with these story times, but I feel like I share and I don't hold back, and in the hope always to have some kind of impact or some kind of positive impact. So I think that's really, really important. And I know for some people it's really, really hard. And I feel like with therapy, you do learn you learn skills, management skills, but skills that you didn't grow up with, you never knew. So when you have this complete stranger sitting there who knows what they're talking about, by the way, obviously, who's telling you and giving you homework to do, they're like, okay, go home and this week focus on this week do this. It's almost like you're working on yourself, and that's never going to happen overnight. So when people are like, oh, you don't need therapy, you don't need medication, like, you know, come over one day, we'll drink and we'll talk and you'll be fine tomorrow. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Maybe for some people who are maybe just feeling a little bit of anxiety or panic attacks, which is different, by the way. You have depression, you have anxiety, then you have panic attacks. Sometimes they're all interlinked, but sometimes they're not. So it doesn't mean that just because one person's having an anxiety attack over something in that moment, yeah, you can help them in that moment and get them out of it. But depression is something that tends to stay for a long time. So that usually requires therapy and things like that. So yeah, so communication was something that I learned, and that is why I have a much better relationship with my parents, because I'm able to make them understand things. So then, you know, they understand. Just like how my mum for years used to be very negative when she used to talk to me about kids, me not having kids, and she used to always pressure me. And every phone call when we lived in Malaysia as well, I would be like, oh, when are you gonna give me grandchildren? When are you gonna, you know? And I used to be so defensive and I used to be so angry. I'll do another story time on motherhood and not being able to conceive and how that's made me feel and stuff, maybe. But now my mum doesn't do that, because she understands that it hurts me and it really impacts me. And so she doesn't. My mother-in-law never has, actually, because she's known from the beginning that I couldn't conceive from when we got married, and I was very open about that. So she never pressures me, but my mum did for a long time, and now she stopped, and she's very, very empathetic towards me, which is amazing. But again, it was communication. Obviously, the reason you take antidepressants, by the way, just to mention that as well, is it kind of, you know, instead of feeling bad, but then you're not feeling great as well, it kind of like subdues you. So you literally just feel nothing. You just feel nothing, not good or bad. So you're able to get through the day. You're able to do basic chores. You're able to go to work. You're able to survive. And obviously that's not a great way of living, but it's still better than feeling so bad that you want to harm yourself every single day. So antidepressants helped me. I took them for 3 years, which is a very long time, but I took them and they helped me. Eventually, when I was weaning off, I loved the feeling of being excited and happy, you know, that positive feeling, because I didn't feel that throughout my depression. But after I was weaning off and I was working on myself and I was healing, I was able to. And then it was kind of just like, oh my God, wow, you know, I'm able to, it's like you seeing colors, you're seeing auras, and you're feeling great. And that's an amazing feeling, guys. It's an amazing feeling to be able to be excited and happy, and it's not short-lived. It's something where you can finally say you're content. You feel content about things, and I definitely do. I feel like I've hit that point in my life now where I do feel content. Yeah, things happen, you know, always. Nothing in my life, except for something that happened a few years ago, another story time, is, you know, nothing pushes me over the edge anymore. And that was my goal, you know, from depression. The goal is that you just want to get through the day, that even when bad things happen, you work through it, you talk about it to somebody, and you get through it, and then, you know, you live life. And I think that's really important. So if you do know somebody that you think who's depressed, please talk to them, try and talk to them, and direct them, guide them, you know, to see somebody professional. If you're a parent and you're watching this and you think your child might be, please talk to them, communicate with them. Yeah, you know, but obviously if you're going through depression yourself, I hope this video helped you a little bit. I didn't want to do this video so you compare your problems with mine and you think, oh, but my problems are not as bad, or my problems are worse. Of course, and everyone's problems, it could be such a small thing to one person, but it's such a big thing to another person, right? So you can't ever say to somebody, oh, but you're depressed over this. Like, please, please, please don't do that. Like, depression is different for different people. Anxiety attacks are different. Panic attacks are different. They're all ways of your body trying to tell you, like, hey, go do something. And for me, it was therapy, antidepressants, but also now, what helps me now when I do have any of these feelings, you know, negative feelings or feeling down or anxiety. I haven't had panic attacks in quite a long time now, like years, but I talk about it. I talk about it to people. I talk about it to my husband. I talk to my parents. I talk to my friends. I talk to my cousins. So at least I have that support system now. But when I didn't feel like I had it, I mean, these people were all there, but I just didn't use them as my support system, is when I needed the therapy at the time. And so, you know, do that. Try and talk to somebody and try and get the help that you can. I will, obviously there are helplines in every country that you live in. There are helplines. You can easily Google it. So look into that as well. I would just mention the ones in the UK, but I know I have people who watch my videos from all over the world. So I feel like please, please, please do look into helplines. Like I said, if you know somebody who is depressed, maybe you could do the research for them. Look for therapists in your local area. And mental health has become such a big thing now. People talk about mental health a lot more openly than they did maybe 10 years ago. And I feel like there is a lot of support out there. And I think you should use them. You should access them. You should try and reach out to them and help yourself, you know, be that better person, be a happier person. And then you will attract all the amazing things in your life, honestly. So yeah, I hope this video was, yeah, okay. And I hope you learned something, and I hope, yeah. I'm sorry, this is probably the longest video that I've done, but I needed to share a lot of stuff. But yeah, hope you guys like this video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave your feedback in the comments like you did in the last one. I've read every single one of them, and I'm so, so, so grateful. So thank you.